The room was dark and cold, filled with silence that pressed heavy on every corner. Rows of children sat against metal walls, each one too weak to move. Their small frames were covered only in rough gray fabric. Their eyes looked empty. Their bodies thin from hunger and fear. No one spoke because speaking was forbidden. Among them sat a little girl, smaller than most. Her name was not known, because she had no name. To the alien guards, she was only digit 34117, a number spoken without care, a sound that meant nothing. She did not know what a name even felt like. She only knew orders, punishments, and silence. Every day, the guards came. They walked past the rows, shouting numbers, pulling some children away. Sometimes they returned, broken and bruised. Sometimes they never returned. 3417 had learned not to ask where they went. She had learned not to cry, because tears brought punishment. Yet deep inside her, she wanted someone, anyone, to see her as more than a digit. Her secret was a tiny stone she had found years ago, smooth and white. She kept it hidden in her cloth. It was the only thing she could call hers. At night, when the guards left, she held it tight in her hand and whispered in her mind, "If I had a name, I would tell it to you." One morning, the facility was filled with strange noise. The walls shook slightly, and for the first time, new footsteps echoed through the halls. Not the heavy boots of guards, but something different, lighter, slower, careful. The children dared to glance up, their hollow eyes reflecting confusion. Then came a voice, not sharp like the overseers, not cold like the guards, but deep, steady, and strangely warm. It was a human voice. "This is the place?" he asked. His words carried curiosity, not cruelty. Digit 3417 froze. She had heard stories of humans whispered between guards. They said humans were dangerous, unpredictable. They said humans had destroyed great armies. Some called them monsters. But this voice, this sound, it was not like the stories. The human walked with two alien officers. His tall frame made him stand out. His face was stern, but his eyes moved slowly across the rows of children. He looked at them not like objects, but like living beings. For a moment, his gaze stopped on 34117. She lowered her head quickly, afraid, too weak. One alien officer sneered, pointing at her. "That one will be disposed of soon, worthless." The human's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not speak, but he looked again at the small girl. Something inside him shifted. He saw not a number, but a child, thin and trembling, clutching her knees tightly. The aliens continued walking, showing him other parts of the facility. They boasted about efficiency, about discipline, about control. But the human's mind kept returning to the little girl. Her eyes, though filled with fear, carried something else, something that spoke louder than the silence of the hall. Hours passed. The children were fed a thin, tasteless liquid, barely enough to live. 3417 drank quietly. Her hands shook. She noticed the human again across the hall, standing apart while the aliens spoke among themselves. For the briefest second, his eyes met hers again. She quickly looked away, but not before noticing something. His eyes carried sorrow. That night, the guards returned. They dragged two children away. Their cries were muffled by the sound of boots. 3417 clutched her stone tighter. Her body trembled. She thought of the human. She wondered why his eyes had not been empty, like the others. The next day, whispers spread. Some of the older children dared to murmur. They said the human was different. They said he asked too many questions. They said he looked at them like they were real. 3417 listened. Her small heart beat faster. She did not know why, but she felt something strange, a small flicker of hope. Later, when the guards shouted her number, she expected pain. But instead, she was pulled into a small room where the human stood alone. The aliens had left for a moment. 3417 froze in the corner, her eyes wide with fear. The human crouched down, lowering himself to her height. His voice was quiet. "What's your name?" he asked. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She shook her head slowly, afraid to answer, afraid of punishment. The human's eyes softened. He nodded, as if he understood. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then he whispered, "You're not just a number." Before he could say more, the door opened and the aliens returned. The moment was gone. The guards pushed her back into the hall, but her mind echoed with the words, "You're not just a number." For the first time in her life, 3417 began to wonder. If she was not just a digit, then who was she? The human's name was Captain Elias Ward, a soldier who had seen too many wars and too many broken lives. He was officially here as a guest, a representative from Earth, invited to observe the alien facility. But deep inside, he already hated what he saw. The alien overseers showed him rows of numbers, children without names. They explained proudly how they had perfected control. Numbers have no past, no family, no future. One of them boasted, "They are tools, nothing more." Elias stayed, silent. His jaw tightened. He had seen battlefields filled with soldiers who had no choice but to fight. He had seen civilians crushed by empires. But this was different. These were children stripped of identity, left to fade into nothingness. His heart burned, yet he kept his face calm. That night, he sat in the small quarters the aliens gave him. His mind could not rest. He kept remembering her, the small one, 3417. The way she hid a stone in her hand, the way her eyes had met his for only a second. He thought of how she shook when her number was called. He thought of how she said nothing when he asked her name. He whispered into the silence. No, child should live like that. But the choice before him was dangerous. He was not here to interfere, Earth had warned him. Do not provoke the alien empire. Do not break their rules. Do not draw attention. Humans were still rebuilding alliances. One mistake could spark war, yet Elias knew he could not walk away. Not this time. The next morning, the overseers led him again into the main hall. Children sat against the walls as always, lifeless, voiceless. The guard shouted numbers, dragging some forward. Elias watched, his fists curled at his side. Suddenly, the alien officer gestured at 3417. "This one," he said coldly, "is weak. She has no value. Tonight we will dispose of her. The waste is unnecessary." The words hit Elias like a knife. He felt a surge of anger rise inside him. His eyes locked onto the girl. She sat frozen, clutching her knees, her little stone hidden in her hands, her breathing sharp and fast. She knew what dispose meant. She knew tonight was the end. Something broke inside Elias. He stepped forward before he could stop himself. "Wait," he said. His voice echoed in the hall. The aliens looked at him in surprise. "What is it, human?" One sneered. Elias forced himself to keep his voice calm. "She's young, too young to be discarded. Why throw her away? She may still be useful." The aliens exchanged glances, amused. "You care for the digits?" one asked mockingly. "Strange. You humans are sentimental creatures." Elias said nothing. He knew he had to act carefully. Too much emotion and they would suspect him. Too much silence and she would die tonight. He chose his words slowly. "Allow me to study her as part of my observation. I want to see why you mark her as useless. Consider it. Research." The overseer narrowed his eyes, but after a pause he shrugged. "Very well, human. She is nothing but a number. If you wish to waste your time, do it. But remember, she is still property of the system." Elias nodded, hiding his relief. For now, she was safe. That evening, when the guards brought 3417 to the small room, she stood trembling in the corner. Her eyes darted nervously. She did not understand why she was here. Why she had been spared. Elias crouched down again just as he had before. He spoke softly. "You don't have to be afraid." His words were gentle, but she pressed herself tighter against the wall, her thin frame shaking. He waited, giving her time. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ration bar, far better than the tasteless liquid she usually received. He placed it on the ground between them and slid it gently toward her. "Eat," he said. "It's yours." She stared at it, eyes wide. Her hands twitched, but she did not move. Slowly, carefully, Elias nodded. "It's not a trick, I promise." After long minutes, she crawled forward, picked it up, and took a small bite. Her eyes widened at the taste. She ate quickly, then stopped, as if ashamed. She whispered so quietly he almost missed it. "Why?" Elias's chest tightened. That was the first word he had ever heard her speak. He leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. "Because you're not just a number, you matter." She blinked at him, not understanding. The word matter was foreign. She had never been told such a thing. All her life she had been digits, orders, silence. Now this human spoke as if she was alive. Elias looked at her, and in that moment his decision was clear. He could not let her die here. He could not walk away. He would save her, even if it meant breaking every rule. That night, as the facility quieted, he began to plan. The corridors, the guards, the alarms. He studied everything. He would find a way. He would take her with him. For Captain Elias Ward, the choice was made. He would risk his mission, his safety, even his life. Because for the first time in years of war and duty, he had found something worth protecting. She was not 3417 anymore. She was a child waiting to be saved. The night was heavy with silence. The alien facility always felt lifeless after dark. Only the sound of boots echoed in the distance, guards patrolling, eyes sharp, weapons ready. But Elias was awake, sitting in the corner of his room, memorizing every sound, every routine, every path. He had watched carefully for days. He knew how often the guards changed shifts. He knew which corridors stayed dark when the power dimmed. He knew the weak points in the alarms. And now, with 3417's life in danger, he was ready to act. The small girl lay curled on the cold floor of her assigned cell, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees, the white stone pressed in her hand. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing. She did not dare dream. She did not dare hope. Yet deep inside, she remembered the human's words. "You're not just a number." That single sentence had burned itself into her mind. She repeated it silently as if it was a secret prayer. She did not know what it meant, but it felt warm. And for the first time she feared the end, because she wanted to understand those words. Elias slipped quietly into the corridor. His boots, silent against the steel floor, his body moved like a shadow. He carried no bright light, only a small device he had smuggled inside his jacket, a human-made tool designed to confuse alien scanners. The guards at the far end of the hall did not see him. They were busy laughing over their drinks, careless and tired. Elias pressed his hand against the lock of 3417's cell. The tool buzzed softly, sparks danced. Then with a quiet click, the door slid open. The girl sat up instantly, her eyes wide, her body trembling in fear. She expected guards, punishment, pain, but instead, she saw him, the tall human with sharp eyes and steady hands. He crouched down, his voice a whisper. "Come quickly." She did not move. Her breath came fast, shallow. She shook her head, whispering, "If they catch us, they kill." Elias looked at her, his voice calm but firm. "If we stay, you die anyway. Do you trust me?" Her fingers tightened around the stone. Her heart pounded. For a long second, she hesitated. Then, with a shaky nod, she crawled to him. Her small hand slipped into his large one. His grip was steady, warm. Together they stepped into the corridor. The metal door slid closed behind them with a soft hiss. For the first time in her life, she left her cell not under orders, not dragged by guards, but walking by her own choice. They moved quickly, staying in the shadows. Elias guided her with silent gestures. He had studied every camera, every patrol. He knew they had only minutes. The girl followed close, her bare feet silent, her eyes wide with terror. At one corner, two guards appeared suddenly. Their armor clanked as they spoke. Laughing about the weak digits, Elias froze, pulling the girl back against the wall. His hand gently covered her mouth. She held her breath, her small body trembling against his chest. The guards passed without looking, their voices fading into the distance. Elias let her go, whispering, "You're safe, keep moving." They reached the main corridor leading to the hangar. But here the danger grew. Bright lights glowed above, cameras watched. Alarms waited for the slightest mistake. Elias pressed his device again. A faint pulse spread, blinding the sensors for a few seconds. "Run," he whispered. And together, they sprinted. Her legs were weak, unused to running. She stumbled. But Elias lifted her into his arms without slowing down. His boots pounded against the steel floor. Her arms clung around his neck. Her heart raced. She had never felt this kind of speed, this kind of freedom. Behind them, a siren blared. Red. Lights flashed across the walls. The system had detected the breach. Guards shouted, their boots thundering. The hunt had begun. Elias ducked into a side hall. The girl pressed tightly against him. He turned corners fast, his mind mapping the path he had memorized. Laser fire cracked against the walls behind them. He did not stop. His breath was heavy, but his grip stayed strong. They reached the final door to the hangar. Elias slammed his hand against the lock. The device sparked again, slower this time. The system resisted, alarms screamed louder, footsteps grew closer. The girl pressed her stone against her chest, whispering silently, her eyes filled with fear but also with something new. Hope. For the first time, she wanted to survive. With a sharp click, the door opened. The hangar spread wide, filled with ships and machines. Elias ran forward, scanning. Quickly, his eyes locked onto a small transport craft, fast enough to escape if they could lift it in time. But the guards were already pouring into the hangar, their weapons raised, their voices shouting. Elias placed the girl inside the transport, his voice steady but urgent. "Stay down, don't move." Then he turned, pulling a blaster from his belt. The human weapon hummed with power, different from the alien rifles. His eyes narrowed, his voice low. "They won't take you back." The girl peeked from the corner of the seat. Her heart raced as she watched the human stand alone against a wall of enemies. His figure tall, steady, unshaken. For the first time, she believed the words he had told her. She was not just a digit anymore. She was someone worth saving. The transport ship shuddered as it lifted from the hangar. Its engines roared to life. Blue light filling the chamber. Elias pulled the controls hard, sending the craft surging into the dark of space. Behind them, alarms blared, sirens screamed, and alien ships scrambled in pursuit. Inside the small cabin, the little girl sat curled in the seat. Her hands clutched the straps, her eyes wide with fear. Every vibration of the ship made her flinch. She had never been inside a vessel like this, never felt the pull of engines, never seen the stars move so fast outside the window. Elias's face was tight with focus. His hands moved across the controls with precision, dodging fire, weaving through the void. His voice remained calm, even as the ship shook. "Hold on, little one. We'll make it." The girl pressed her stone tightly against her chest. Her lips moved without sound, repeating his earlier words again and again. "You are not just a number, you matter." Moments later, the ship broke through the blockade. The alien fighters still followed, but they were slower. Elias triggered a burst of human technology, an electronic pulse, scrambling the enemy sensors. Red blips vanished from the screen one by one. Soon the space around them was quiet again. Only then did he allow himself to breathe. His shoulders dropped slightly. He glanced back at her. The child still sat rigid, her thin frame trembling. Her eyes locked on him with a strange mixture of fear and trust. "You're safe now," he said softly. His voice carried warmth, but she only stared at him, her lips parting slightly, as if she wanted to speak but could not. Minutes passed in silence. Only the soft hum of the ship filled the cabin. Elias turned the autopilot on and crouched down beside her seat. He lowered his voice, careful, gentle. "Do you understand? You're free from them now. She shook her head quickly. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "No one is free. They always take us back." Elias felt his chest tighten. The despair in her words was heavy. He reached out slowly, resting a hand near hers, not touching, giving her the choice. "Not this time," he said. His tone carried steel. "Not while I breathe." The girl blinked rapidly as if confused by his certainty. Her small hand moved slightly closer, not quite touching his, but not pulling away either. After a long silence, Elias asked softly, "Do you know why they call you a number?" She lowered her head, whispering, "Because I am not worth a name." Elias's jaw clenched. His heart burned at those words. He shook his head firmly. "No child is worthless. You deserve more than a number." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "But I don't have one," she whispered. For a moment time seemed to still. Elias studied her face. The hollow cheeks, the tired eyes, the fragile hope breaking through her fear. He thought of the stars outside the window, endless and bright. And then softly he spoke, "Then I will give you one." Her breath caught. She stared at him as if she did not believe. His voice was steady, almost reverent. "From now on, you are Lyra." The name rolled through the air like music. It felt alive. It felt warm. It felt hers. The girl blinked, the sound sinking into her soul. "Ra," she whispered, testing it carefully. Elias smiled faintly. "Yes, Lyra, named after the stars. They are bright even in the darkest night, just like you." The girl repeated it again, softer this time. "Lyra." Her lips trembled, and suddenly, her eyes filled with tears, not tears of pain, not the silent cries of fear, but tears of something new, something she had never known. She had an identity. She had a name. Her small hands shook as she clutched the stone to her chest, whispering, "Lyra," again and again. Each time it grew stronger, more real. The number 3417 was fading, and in its place a child was being born anew. Elias watched quietly, his chest heavy with emotion. He had seen comrades fall. He had carried children out of war zones, but this moment felt different, more powerful, more human. He had given more than freedom, he had given meaning. Suddenly the ship jolted, pulling them back to reality. Red lights blinked on the console. Elias rushed to the controls, scanning quickly. "Patrols," he muttered. Alien signals were closing in. The Empire was not giving up easily. Lyra wiped her tears quickly, fear rushing back into her eyes. "They found us," she whispered. Elias gritted his teeth, his voice sharp. "They'll have to catch us first." He pulled the ship hard to the left, engines roaring. The stars blurred as they sped into deeper space, pursued once more. But this time Lyra was not silent. She whispered her name, clutching it like a weapon. Lyra, over and over, as if the sound itself gave her courage. For the first time, she did not feel like a digit waiting to be erased. For the first time, she felt alive. And beside her, Captain Elias Ward promised himself silently, whatever it took, he would protect that name. The stars outside the window stretched into long silver lines as the transport ship jumped into faster-than-light travel. The engines hummed, the cabin shook, and Lyra pressed her face to the small glass, watching space blur in ways she never imagined. She whispered her new name again, soft but steady. Lyra. It felt strange on her tongue, but it gave her strength. Elias sat at the controls, his jaw tight. His eyes scanned the readings. He knew the Empire would not stop. The facility had been compromised. A human had stolen one of their digits. And that was more than a crime, it was an insult. The chase would be relentless. He opened the comms briefly, static filling the cabin. Then a voice, harsh and alien, cut through. "Human vessel, surrender the property, return the digit, and your death will be quick." Lyra flinched at the word digit. Her small hands clenched. She whispered to herself, "I am not 3417. I am Lyra." Her heart pounded, but she repeated it again, louder this time. Elias glanced back at her, pride flickering in his eyes. He answered the comms, his voice calm but sharp. Her name is Lyra, and she is not your property. He cut the channel before they could reply. His hands moved swiftly across the controls, preparing for what was to come. Moments later, warning lights lit up. Alien warships dropped from hyperspace behind them, black and silver, their weapons glowing with deadly energy, the stars filled with danger. Hold on, Elias warned. His fingers flew across the panel. The transport was not made for battle, but his experience as a pilot gave them a chance. Engines roared, shields flickered, and the chase began. Bolts of energy shot past, blazing like blue fire. The ship shook violently as one blast grazed the side. Sparks flew inside the cabin. Lyra screamed, clinging to her seat. Elias steadied the vessel, his voice steady even under fire. We're still flying. That's all that matters. Lyra forced herself to breathe. She remembered the nights in the facility. The silence, the fear, the endless waiting for punishment. That was worse than this. At least now she was running toward something, not waiting to be erased. She gripped her, stone tightly, whispering her name again. Lyra. Elias pulled the ship into a narrow asteroid belt, jagged rocks spinning wildly through space. The alien warships followed, larger and heavier. Their weapons cut through the asteroids, explosions bursting around them. Dust and fire filled the void. The transport weaved between the rocks. Elias's hands sure and steady, his eyes sharp. Lyra gasped as they spun close to a massive stone, so near she thought they would crash, but somehow, he pulled them. Through behind them, one alien ship struck an asteroid head-on, bursting into flames. The debris scattered. Slowing the others, Elias used the chance, diving deeper into the field. The transport rattled, shields straining, but they pressed forward. Inside the cabin, Lyra's fear slowly shifted. She watched Elias with wide eyes. His calm, his strength, his determination. It was unlike anything she had ever known. He was not afraid of the Empire, not afraid of their threats. For the first time, she wondered if she could be like that. Suddenly, an asteroid clipped the side of the ship. Metal screeched, alarms blared, the transport spun. Elias fought the controls. Systems damaged, he muttered, sweat on his brow. He steadied the ship, but the warning lights kept flashing. Lyra crawled from her seat toward him. Her voice shook but carried determination. What can I do? Elias looked at her surprised. She was trembling, her body weak, yet her eyes burned with a spark. He hesitated, then pointed to a small panel. Hold that lever down. It will reroute power to the shields. Don't let go, no matter what. Her small hands wrapped around the lever. It was heavy, harder than she expected. Her arms shook, but she held it with all her strength. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Every second felt like an eternity. The ship pushed through the last cluster of rocks, bursting out into clear space. The alien ships were still behind, but fewer now. Elias slammed the controls, activating the last of their fuel boost. The engines roared, flames streaking behind them. The transport surged forward, leaving the Empire's ships shrinking in the distance. Finally, silence returned. The alarms faded. The stars outside looked calm again. Elias leaned back exhausted, his chest rose and fell heavily. He looked back at Lyra, still gripping the lever with trembling arms, her face pale but determined. You did it, he said softly. His voice carried pride. You helped save us. Lyra released the lever slowly, her arms aching. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. She looked at him with wide eyes. I was useful? She whispered. Elias crouched down, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. No, Lyra. You were more than useful. You were brave. The word sank deep into her heart. Brave. No one had ever called her that before. Her lips trembled, her eyes wet, but she smiled faintly for the first time in that moment. Something changed inside her. She was not a digit, not a tool, not a shadow in a cell. She was Lyra. Brave, alive, free. But as the stars stretched before them, Elias knew this was only the beginning. The Empire would not stop. The hunt would continue. And now, it was not only about survival. It was about protecting the spark of hope that had been born in one fragile child. The stars outside were calm, but inside the transport, Elias felt the storm building. He had managed to outrun the Empire's ships for now, but he knew it could not last. The alien commanders would not allow this insult to stand. They would come, and they would come strong. Lyra sat near the window, her small hands resting on the stone she carried. Her lips moved softly, repeating her name, reminding herself of who she was, but fear lingered in her chest. "They won't stop, will they?" she whispered. Elias looked at her, his face steady, though exhaustion showed in his eyes. "No," he admitted. "They'll chase us until the end. But if they want you back, they'll have to go through me first." Lyra's throat tightened. His words carried the weight of steel. She wanted to believe them, and for the first time in her life, she did. Moments later, alarms lit up again. A massive ship dropped out of hyperspace ahead of them. Its dark frame filled the view, larger than any vessel Lyra had ever seen. Its weapons glowed red. Its voice came through the comms, cold and sharp. "Human," the commander growled. "You dare steal our property? You dare give a digit a name? Return the subject at once or be destroyed." The sound of the word digit made Lyra's stomach twist. Her small body shook. But then she remembered the night Elias gave her a name. She remembered how she had helped hold the lever, how he had called her brave. Slowly she stood, her legs unsteady but her eyes shining. She stepped closer to the comms, her voice trembling but growing stronger with every word. "I am not a digit," she said. Her small voice echoed through the cabin. "My name is Lyra." For a moment, silence filled the channel. The alien commander's laugh broke it, cruel and mocking. "A name? You think a word makes you more than a number?" "Foolish human sentiment, she is ours." Elias leaned forward, his voice cutting like a blade. "No, she was never yours. You only tried to erase her, but she belongs to herself now." The alien ship moved closer, weapons charging. Elias knew they could not win in a fight. Their small transport was too weak, but surrender was not an option. He turned to Lyra, his voice firm. "Listen to me. This is the moment where we stand. Not as prey, but as people who will not bow. Do you understand?" Lyra nodded slowly. Her fear was still there, but behind it burned a new fire. She clenched her stone tight, whispering her name once more. Lyra. The enemy ship launched its first volley, beams of energy streaking across space. Elias pulled the transport hard to the side, alarms screamed, shields flared. The ship rattled violently. Sparks burst from the panels. Lyra stumbled but caught herself. Her eyes wide but unbroken, Elias's hands flew across the controls. He dodged another strike, but they could not last forever. "We need to hit them, where it hurts," he muttered, scanning quickly. His eyes locked on a weak point near the enemy's engines, a vent for energy exhaust. Small but vulnerable, he armed the transport's limited weapons, only 2 torpedoes left. His jaw tightened. "Lyra," he called, "come here." She ran to his side. "Do you see that?" He pointed at the glowing vent on the screen. "That is where we strike, but I need you to help me guide it. Can you do that?" Her heart pounded. She had never been asked for help before, never been trusted. But she nodded firmly. Yes, together. They worked. Elias set the coordinates. Lyra's small hands steadied the targeting system, her eyes focused, her breath sharp. Outside, the enemy ship loomed closer, their weapons glowing like fire. The alien commander's voice filled the comms, again furious. "Last chance, human. Return the digit or burn with her." Lyra lifted her head, her voice clear and strong. "I told you, I am not a digit. I am Lyra." She slammed the button as Elias launched the torpedoes. The weapons streaked across the void, glowing white. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then the enemy ship shook violently as fire burst from its engines. The vent exploded, flames tearing through the hull. The massive vessel shuddered, its weapons flickering. Its voice turned to static, then silence. "Lyra." "Gasu." The wreckage of the alien commander's ship floated silently in the void. Flames and debris drifted through space like broken stars. The Empire had suffered a wound, not just in metal, but in pride. One human and one fragile child had done what no one dared imagine. Inside the transport, the cabin was quiet except for the soft hum of damaged engines. Elias sat at the controls, his body weary, his face marked with exhaustion, but in his eyes burned steady determination. He glanced back at the small figure sitting by the window. Lyra, once digit 3417, pressed her forehead against the glass. Her reflection showed wide eyes and trembling lips, but also something new. Her voice whispered softly, again and again, "Lyra, Lyra, Lyra." As if every repetition carved the truth deeper into her soul, she turned toward Elias, her small voice, uncertain. "They will come again, won't they?" Elias nodded, not sugarcoating it. "Yes, they won't stop, but neither will we." His words were simple, yet they carried weight. Lyra looked at him, confusion flickering in her eyes. "Why do you care?" she asked. "I was nothing. I was just a number. Why risk your life for me?" Elias leaned back, his gaze steady. "Because no one is nothing. Not while I breathe, not while I fight. I've seen too many good lives thrown away. I won't let yours be one of them." Lyra lowered her eyes, her chest tightening with emotion she had no words for. All her life she had been told she was worthless, weak, disposable. Now here sat a man who risked everything to prove the opposite. She clutched her stone to her chest and whispered again, "I am Lyra." This time it wasn't to remind herself, but to declare it. The ship drifted through space, scarred but alive. Elias checked the maps, scanning for safe routes. "We'll need a place to rest, somewhere the Empire's reach is thin," he muttered. His mind searched old memories of battlefields and allies. Finally, he marked a small, forgotten colony on the edge of the stars. Hours passed, and the ship finally broke into orbit above a quiet planet. Its surface was covered in forests and mountains, with rivers of silver light cutting through the valleys. Unlike the Empire's cold, lifeless halls, this world breathed with life. The transport landed roughly, its damaged engines sputtering, but they managed to settle in a clearing. Elias opened the hatch, fresh air flooding inside. He stepped out first, scanning carefully, then he looked back and gestured. "Come, Lyra, it's safe." She hesitated, her bare feet pausing on the edge. She had never felt grass, never breathed fresh air, never seen a sky that wasn't made of steel. Slowly she stepped down. Her toes touched the earth, cool and soft. She gasped quietly, her eyes wide as she looked around at the endless trees and sky. Tears filled her eyes, not of sadness but wonder. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Elias smiled faintly, watching her. "Yes, it is, and it's yours now. No one can take it from you." For days they stayed in the forest, repairing the ship as much as possible. Elias taught Lyra simple things. How to build a fire, how to drink fresh water, how to sleep without fear. At night they sat beneath the stars, Elias pointing out constellations. "That one," he said one evening, pointing upward, "is Lyra, the constellation your name comes from." The girl looked up, her lips parting. She whispered, "Lyra," as if claiming the stars themselves. For the first time she smiled fully, her eyes shining like the constellations above. But peace was fragile. One evening, Elias picked up faint signals on the scanner. "Alien transmissions searching. They're spreading the hunt wider," he muttered. His jaw tightened. He looked at Lyra, her face pale. "They want you back more than ever now." Lyra's small hands clenched into fists. Fear was there, but something stronger rose with it. She shook her head firmly. "No, they cannot take me. I am Lyra. I am not theirs." Her words made Elias pause. He realized something powerful. This was no longer about him protecting her. This was about her becoming strong enough to stand. The night before they prepared to leave the planet, Lyra sat beside the fire, her stone in her palm. Her eyes reflected the flames. She looked at Elias and said softly, "There are others like me, aren't there? Others who are still digits?" Elias nodded slowly. Yes, thousands, maybe more. Lyra's voice trembled but carried resolve. Then I want them to know too. I want them to have names. I want them to be free. Her words struck deep. Elias studied her, seeing not just a frightened child, but the beginning of something greater. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we'll make sure they know, one step at a time. The next morning, the transport lifted again, rising from the forests into the stars. The Empire's shadow still loomed across the galaxy, but in the heart of one small child burned a light no shadow could destroy. She was no longer Digit 3417, she was Lyra, and her story was only just beginning.